So we are in a series on signs of Jesus, but we're going to take a pause on that because when Jeremy called me, I was thinking, okay, what's going to fit well this morning? We've got baptism, we've got a lot of kids and a lot of youth. What's going to help flow this service? The highlight of the service is the baptism. We are all excited about that, and it is a good thing when we get to gather together as a church, as family and friends, to celebrate somebody who makes a public declaration to say, yes, I am following Jesus, but I want you all to know it. And I'm really committing myself to this. So that's going to be the highlight. So what is my role here in the next 15 minutes? What I want to do, I've been thinking about the crucial role that the church plays in the life of our kids and our youth. And it's crucial. Our youth just had a big sleepover on Friday in partnership with the Alliance Church and under the umbrella of Young Life. And there's 30 to 40 kids having a big sleepover. Every Tuesday, our youth meet for Bible study and for events that encourage our friends to come out to church and to learn about Jesus. I'm really grateful for the way the church is serving our youth. I think of Gardam Lake, and I think of the influence of Gardam Lake on our kids and our youth. And Hannah's going to be in the baptism tank with me, and Hannah's been a leader of Alyssa and an influencer, and she's going to be there helping baptize Alyssa, which is fantastic. And I know many of us parents can point to Gardam Lake as a big influencer on them. I think of Sunday school and what happens in the rooms over there. And I would say that what happens over there is just as important, if not maybe even a bit more important than what we're doing here, because we are raising up the next generation in faith. We are passing on what is so important to us to our next generation. So, I want to talk about that this morning. The church is called to many things, many important things, but I think one of the most important things the church is called to is to pass on the faith to the next generation. We have to be about this. And so yesterday when Jeremy called me and said, can you help out, I just thought this is going to flow well and really set Alyssa up because she's the highlight here. So passing on the faith to the next generation. And I want to talk about the role of the greater Christian community and how we do that. So it's not really a sermon, it's more of a reflection of what I think is one of the more important things that we as a church can do. And so you've all heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And that really is so true of our kids and our youth. They desperately need the influence of the greater community in order for them to make that personal decision to follow Christ. We as parents have a huge role, but we also recognize that the greater community has a huge role in pouring into them. There's been a lot of studies on this. There was a big study called Sticky Faith that was published a few years ago. And it's a book that interviewed thousands of young adults, and they tried to find some common themes on how faith stuck for these young adults. And so they published this, and it's really interesting. And I'm going to read a little thing here, but I'm going to grab some water first. Okay. So they found a few common threads, but this was the big ones. For high school and college students, there is a relationship between attendance at church-wide worship services and sticky faith, which is really interesting. So young adults who were still believers and they had a faith that stuck with them, there was an interview done, and they marked the boxes of the things that were really influential in their life. And one of the big things was church attendance, that it really did make a difference on them. Then there's a Canadian study that got put out from Hemedring Faith. And this is what they said. The majority of youth and young adults who stopped attending their churches or youth groups soon also dropped their faith as well. The rumor that attending has no effect on belief has been shown to be false. And study after study is pointing to this. So we live in a day where church is optional. Many people think, well, I'll go if I can or if it suits. But it's not that important because I can do church at home with me and my family. But what studies are actually showing is that we need the greater community. And for young adults, when they talk about a faith that sticks with them, they talk about attendance in church. And it's not just showing up to church, but it's participating in church and feeling like you're a valuable member of church. And so it's important. We all know this, that it's important for parents to model it and to teach it. But it's also important that the greater community, the church extended, recognizes their role in raising kids of faith and passing on their faith to the next generation. So we're going to look at a passage, but before we do that, I want to share with you a little bit about India. So I was there 2 weeks ago. I go there once a year, and I go there to assess. We have a church planting ministry that we do there, and so I go there to assess the church plants, to see what's working, how we can support it better, to encourage the churches, and to come back here, raise support and raise awareness and raise prayer support for the ministry that is happening in India. So those of you who know me, I've been up here a lot talking about India, and I could tell a lot of stories, but I'm just going to tell a few this morning. So Ethan, if you could just flip it over there. There's a church I was at 3 weeks ago. This is what a typical church in Punjab looks like. They meet outside. They got beautiful tents set up. When it's really hot, there's actually overhead tents, but it wasn't hot there when in February. One of the things you'll notice about this church is that it's full of youth and young people and kids. Every church that I go to in India is just packed with kids and young people, and they're not like in the back, kind of half-heartedly engaged. It's not like that. They're in the front, and they're like worshiping, and they're leading, and they're like all over it. It is very cool. When I go to India, and when I go to churches like this, they're young, because these are first-generation Christians. This church is 90% new Christians, first-generation Christians. The pastor moved into this community 3 years ago. I was there 3 years ago, and he started a very small ministry. It's like a tutorial ministry to children. And so as a way to, kids come out of school, and then he does a little bit of extra teaching for them. And it's a way for Christian pastors to get established in the community. So I was there 3 years ago. I saw a few kids, a handful of kids that he was reaching out to. 3 years later, 3 weeks ago, I'm at a church. There's about 200 people there. And this is one of about 10 congregations that he started. The church is about 1,000 people old. This is 3 years, a church plant, 3 years. These are the stories that I hear, and these are churches that I see. I've been to India 10 times, and every time I go, I am seeing churches that start from birth, and I go back later, and I see the church, and it's in the hundreds, some even in the thousands, and they're first-generation Christians, and it's young people that are coming to faith, and it's absolutely amazing what God is doing in that country. So here's a close-up of the front of that church. Notice who's there. They're young people. They're kids, they're youth, they're young adults, and they're loving it. And they are part of it, and they are worshiping, and they're such a crucial part of the church in India. We'll flip it over, Ethan. I want to tell you about the guy in the front there. He's wearing his turban. His name is Gurbej. I met Gurbej when he was a young teenager. His dad comes from a high caste Sikh family. His dad is like a priest in the Gurdwara. Gurbej was really sick, and no one could heal him. And his family eventually took him to a Christian pastor, and the pastor prayed for him, and he was healed. I hear these stories all the time. So many people come to faith because of healing. Gurbej said, okay, I'm going to follow Jesus. So he went in his community, there was a new church plant, one of the guys that we support. And that church planter took Gurbej under his wing and trained him up. He started going to Sunday school, doing youth group, doing leadership camps. Here he's speaking, and I was here in June 2 years ago, and he went to Bible school. And it's a one-year Bible school that we support for guys like Gurbej who can't afford to go to traditional Bible school, but really have a heart for the ministry. So he graduated, he apprenticed as a pastor, now he's a church planter. He's in his young 20s. Flip it over, Ethan. And so this is his church started last year. So he just started a church. There's how the church, most of these churches in India start, they're in somebody's home. And it's a Christian person in their home who says, I'm willing to open up my home. Pastor, you come in and see what you can do in my neighborhood. And so he moved in to this neighborhood. Handful of people started coming, and then you flip over, Ethan. And so this next picture is a picture we took, it'll be 2.5 weeks ago now. There's about 25 people there. Other than the Christian family who host this place, they're all new Christians. So the pastor's just in there, and he's just declaring Christ, and he's working amongst the youth and the kids. And again, as you look out at the faces there, they're young people, kids and youth and young adults, and they love what's going on, and they've come to Christ. And this is a church that's going to grow. It's about 25 people now, and I bet you next year I go there, it's at 100, and then it's just going to start exploding. And that just seems to be the trajectory of churches in India. And it's amazing, but one of the things that I think works so well, first of all, God is at work in powerful ways. But secondly, they really integrate their kids and their youth, and they recognize how important it is to pass on the faith. to that generation. They're not just like an auxiliary part of the church. No, they are like an essential, crucial aspect of the church. And we need to train up our kids and our youth in the faith. And we see it done so well in India. So I could stand up here and tell you so many stories, and you might hear a little bit more next week when I'm hosting as well. But we'll move on to our passage here. When I think of next gen ministry, there's one passage that really sticks out to me, and it's Deuteronomy chapter 6. So we're going to read it, and we're just going to pick it apart here for about 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to hear from Melissa. So, context, Moses is giving a farewell speech. The Israelites have gone through the desert. They're about to enter the promised land. This is Moses' final words to the people. It's like his call to them. It's like his parting words, the really important ones. So this is what he says. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commands that I give you today are to be on your heart. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. When the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you, a land with large flourishing cities you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of good things you did not provide, wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. When you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. So ultimately, to sum it up, Moses says, don't forget about God. Things are about to get really good for you. You're going to have houses and vineyards and wells, and your life's about to improve dramatically. But Moses knows what the temptation is. When life gets easy, we tend to forget about God. And he says, don't forget about God. How do we do this? The primary way is pass on the faith to the next generation. That's what he says. Impress it on your kids, on your children. So first question, what exactly are we passing on? Verse 4, it's called the Shema. The Shema is the basic and the essential creed for Jews. When somebody asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? He quoted this, verse 4, right? Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. It is the most important commandment. This is the first verse that Jewish kids memorize. And it's the verse that is quoted at the beginning of every Jewish service. It is the Shema. It is the core to what it means to be a person of faith, as a person who is seeking to love God with every part of your being. And then how do we go about doing this? Verses 6-9. Notice in verse 6 that it starts with our hearts first. That's the first prerequisite, that faith lives in us first, that it's alive in us, that it's impressed on our hearts. So it leaves me with the question, do my kids see a passion for God in me, in my house? Do our kids see a passion for God in our church? Is this impressed on our hearts? Because kids have a really good way of sniffing out fake people, right? They know. Is this real for you? Is this really important to you? Is this something you're passing on to them? And the passage goes on, verse 7, talk about it a lot when you're sitting and walking. Verse 8, exhibit it through symbols. Verse 9, write it in the most obvious places like doorways and gateways. So we recognize that there's a cultural distance to what specifically is being told here. We don't do these same things, but the heart of it remains the same. The heart of it is let your rhythms and traditions and what you do as a family point to loving God with everything. Make it inhabit a heart for God in your home. Our kids should not be at all surprised when we're talking about God in our house. They should be used to seeing us parents praying together and reading our Bibles together. That should be a normal part of their experience. They should recognize that that's part of their parents' rhythms in how they do life, that we inhabit this in our homes. The sad reality is that for many Christian families, God actually isn't part of the conversation very often. Fuller University is a big university in California. They did a study on this. They interviewed 11,000 Christian teenagers, over 561 congregations, over 6 denominations, and this is what the teenagers said. 12 of them have regular conversations with God with their mom. 5% have a regular conversation about God with their dad. These are Christians. That's what the stats are saying. This should be a more normal part of our household. Parents, we should be inhibiting this. We should be showing this to our kids, that they would recognize it within us, that we are living this out, right? So we as Christian parents need to take very seriously our God-given role to impress loving God on our kids. I want to be really careful here. It's not our job to convert our kids. It's not our job. But it is our job to do our best to give them a Christian worldview. They're going to make their own choice. And there will be some heartache because sometimes they won't make the choice we want them to. So it's not our job to convert them, but it is our job to strive to pass on the faith and inspire them with a Christian worldview, right? To model to them a passion for the Lord. What I want to emphasize next is who the speech is to. Moses didn't say, "Hear, parents of Israel." What did he say? He said, "Hear, O Israel." This isn't a parent seminar. This isn't a sermon just for parents. This is for the entire community. And Moses says to the entire community of Israel, whether you're a parent or not, he says, pass this on to your children. All of you as the community. Hear, O Israel. It's the whole community. When Moses is delivering this message, he is making it a national issue, a tribal issue, and a family issue. So here's the point. Parents, I don't think I need to tell you much more. You know that you have a significant role to play in passing down faith to your kids. But I also want to say to you, church, you have a significant role to play in helping us, parents, pass down faith to the kids. You have a really important role. Right? Parents, your kids, they need other adult voices speaking into their lives. I'll say it again. Parents, your kids need other adult voices speaking into their lives. And I've seen this over and over again. I've worked with youth my whole life. Your youth will get to an age where they know what you're going to say already. And it's going to be the other adults that are reaffirming what you have taught them that's going to make a really big difference in their lives. Sheltering your kids and keeping it just to your own family unit is not actually that healthy. They need other voices. And that's one of the beautiful things about the church, is that we provide that. We provide other voices into our kids' lives that are going to reaffirm what we as parents are trying to do already. Now, I know that there are some of you here that aren't in the child-raising years, but I hope you know how important your role still is as a grandparent, as an aunt or an uncle, as a nephew or a niece, as somebody who attends this church, as a Sunday school teacher, as a youth leader, as somebody who greets our kids at the front door, as somebody who participates as a volunteer at Garden Lake in whatever capacity or other ministries like that. You have a huge role in helping pass on faith to the next generation. It is not just the parents' job. This is something that we do together as a Christian community. And the reality is the more positive voices speaking into our kids' lives, the more influence they have, the more opportunities they have for people pointing them to Jesus. And so I'm so glad my kids can come here to Creekside, who can join with a multi-generational congregation and see other people in different stages of life worship and follow Jesus. I think it rubs off on them. I know it does. I'm so grateful for all the years of Sunday school teachers that have poured into my kids, and youth leaders, and Garden Lake volunteers, and DVBS, and we know that these things take time and energy, but it's such a huge part of what it means to be the church, because we are raising up our kids. We are passing on faith to the next generation. So thank you, Creekside, for the role that you've had in my kids' lives and how you've poured into them. Laura and I fully recognize, as much as we seek to give our kids a Christian worldview, we need the help and the support of other people to do it. And so I'm grateful for a church that takes next generation ministry very, very seriously, and Creekside has always done that, and for that I am really grateful. So I want to just say this: don't underestimate your influence by just being here, by just coming to church, by being a role model. I'm amazed how many parents, after they raise their kids, leave the church. I just don't understand it. It's almost as if church is like a place where I raise my kids and the church is there to help me raise my kids, and then I got nothing to offer anymore. I can't understand that perspective. Man, we need you. We really do. Those of you who are parents that have finished raising your kids, we still need you here so desperately. As young parents, we need you. Our kids need you. You know, we are a church and we're doing this together. We are we're passing on faith together as a community. So, yeah, be inspired, and thank you for that. So I think that's all I want to say, because what I want now is for Alyssa to come on up here. And Alyssa is somebody that's been part of this church for a very, very long time. And whether she says it or not, I know that you have played a role in helping her get to the point where she's at. And so really grateful for that. So Alyssa, come on up here.
I grew up in a Christian family, and it wasn't until about a year ago that I started thinking about getting baptized as a serious commitment to my faith. But last spring, I was watching the baptism service at church, and God really impressed it on my faith, or impressed it on my heart to make a commitment. Since then, I've had at least 4 postponed baptism days because I kept putting it off. I had struggles in my faith, wondering if I was a good enough Christian to do it. I struggled to see God in my life, and I was wondering why I wasn't hearing him. But in the last year or 6 months, he's shown me a lot about how I belong to him no matter what. I don't have to be perfect, and he is very much here and moving in my life, even when I don't think I see him or feel him. Last summer, I junior staffed at Garden for 3 weeks, and it really changed me. It transformed my faith. I started to really see God's presence with me. It taught me so much about how I can know he's speaking to me when a worship song or a Bible verse hits me, when I've been praying on something. Camp taught me how my life is about more than myself, and I get to be an ambassador for Jesus. I get to shine his light and show everyone why his love is so amazing. Camp taught me how real and big and exciting this faith is. I get to personally know Jesus and immerse myself in his word and strive to live by it. And I get to pour myself out to him in prayer. God has blessed me with a wonderful church family to love and support me. He has given me an amazing family, and it has taught me so much about Jesus, but also community and living the Christian life. He has also recently answered my prayers by leading me into a circle of awesome Christian friends, and my faith has even been strengthened by people, non-believers in my life, because it pushes me to back up what I believe and why I have my faith. One of my favorite Bible verses is 1 Samuel 17:47. The battle is the Lord's. Storms in my life are extremely frustrating to me because I like to be in control, but adversity shows me my weaknesses and how I need to lean on God and let him bring out my strengths. I like to overthink a lot, but God keeps showing me that he is in control. His strength is made perfect or I can't do it. His grace is more than enough to cover my failures. His love is what pushes me to be better, and I can't control everything because he's already got it under control. I also love the verse John 16:33. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. I want to get baptized and commit to my faith because Jesus has become such a huge part of my life and who I am. I want to know God and fill my life with him and commit to following Jesus.
Hey, Alyssa, we've heard your testimony. Are you committed to following Jesus wholeheartedly with your life?
Yes.
Well, then, upon that confession of faith, I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
I'm so proud of you.